Let's resurrect an old classic. If you have nothing to offer, you have no business making demands of others. If you guys have been with me for years, you know I cover this here and there, and I did an entire video about it before. That's now gone, so yeah, let's remake it. This is one of the peeves of mine. This is a pet peeve of mine because it infuriates me when I see somebody who has absolutely nothing to offer someone else and feels like they're entitled to what that other person has to offer. They're making demands of them. And the previous time I talked about this, it was pretty much exclusively from a male perspective. I'm going to kind of try to do both this time around, because that's kind of what empathy and all that is, right? You're supposed to understand the other side, even if you don't necessarily agree. You got to know where they're coming from. But yeah, so from a male perspective, what am I talking about here? Just in the relationship game, you got women who look like Trigglypuff, basically. They have absolutely nothing that a man wants. Their personality is even more hideous than their external looks. And yet they seem to demand perfect 10 men. So they got nothing to offer in return, but they feel entitled to a guy with a 6-figure salary, at least 6 foot tall, has at least a 6-inch penis. Those are the 3 6s. Yeah, that was going around a lot back in the day. Yeah, and the guy has to have his own car, his own house, everything. And they will not settle for any less. They always say that among themselves, too. I'm not going to settle for any less than my dream man. And I'm just looking at them like, but your dream man wants nothing to do with you because your dream man has legions of hookers trying to just launch themselves onto his dick to trap him. Why is he going to go with you when he has so many better options? So the inevitable happens and they end up dying alone and miserable. Yeah, so let's talk about it from the women's perspective too, because guys are not immune to this, and we see this very prominently in the incel community. These guys who self-identify as incels, they hang out on all their forums and sometimes meet up in real life and all that, and they lament why they can't get a woman. Now, there's a few, like Elliot Rodger, who are kids of celebrities and have giant trust funds and are loaded with money, but girls still don't want them anyway because of how quote-unquote creepy they come off as. But for the most part, these are guys who usually have very low, if any, income. They're probably a solid 3 at best on the looks scale. They're mostly out of shape. Personality-wise, nothing there at all. Don't get me started. And they do the same thing that these women do. These women who have nothing that men want and demand everything from men, yeah, these guys do the same shit. They demand like a perfect 10 supermodel. They're not going to settle for anything less. And as I point out too, there are women who are willing to get with them. It's just, these women don't meet their standards. So these guys do the same thing the women do. They have nothing to offer. They have nothing a woman would want, especially a woman who is attractive enough to have her pick of the litter. So the same situation like we had with the woman. You got these guys who are not willing to settle for anything less than their perfect woman, and they fail to accept that they have nothing to offer to entice said perfect woman. And meanwhile, that woman is able to get all of the much better looking and richer dudes she wants because she's in demand from them. And also, while we're on this topic, as Turd-Flinging Monkey says as well, there's really no such thing as a male incel, because if you have $200 and you know where to find a hooker, you're not an incel. You're just not. They just don't want to do it. That's the thing. This entire concept of people having nothing to offer but still making demands, it goes further than just relationships as well. Let's look at business, for example. We were just recently talking about what happened with the with all these news sites, well, quote unquote news sites, because they're really just drama rags and smear merchants. Their employees and their staff are unionizing and making more demands. And meanwhile, you know, the owners of the company are probably looking at this going like, you kidding me? You realize we're shrinking rapidly. Like, our industry as a whole is going out of business. And you're making even more demands? Like, what? Like, what do you have to offer me? Oh, God. Or the whole minimum wage arguments, too. Like, yeah, I know my only skill set is something that you could pull any random dude off the street and train him to do in 2 hours, but I deserve $15 an hour for what I do. You know what that gets you? That gets you replaced by a machine. That's what that gets you. And that's what happens when you have nothing to offer the other side, yet you still make demands. They always like to say, oh, this is a compromise. It's a negotiation. Like, no, it's only a negotiation when both sides have something to bargain with. Both sides are willing to make some compromises, right? They're willing to give something up in order to gain something else. If you have literally nothing that the other side wants, you can't negotiate with them, let alone make demands. How do you even expect to try to make any sort of deal like that? You go up to somebody who has everything you want, but you have nothing they want in return, and you just demand, like, oh, you need to give me that. Like, well, what are you going to give me for it? The pleasure of my company. Like, yeah, no thanks, go away. So you know what the next step is, though. If that doesn't work, then they go crying to Daddy Government. Like, Daddy Government, Billy won't share his toys with me. And then they just hope the government will do some redistribution. And that's funny enough what the incels were demanding, too. At least a few of them. They're demanding that the government basically force women to have sex with them. And if you think that's ridiculous, look at all the shit the government already forces on people. It's not out of the question if the birth rate plummeted far enough. Though, before they resort to that, they're going to try to exhaust all of the third world immigrants. But hey, there we are. Maybe you guys agree with some of these people making the demands, but fair enough. I guess to end this off, why don't you put yourself in the position of the guy who has everything, and then you have someone coming up to you demanding that you share your stuff with them, or you flat out give them something you have for nothing. Just because. Now, I have no problems with charity, as long as it's voluntary. If you voluntarily want to give your time, resources, whatever, to help someone else selflessly and not get any benefit to yourself from doing so, I guess other than feeling good about it, more power to you. I appreciate what you do. But you can't force that on somebody, because all that's going to do is breed resentment. If you got these, let's face it, they're parasites, coming up and attaching themselves to you and demanding that you give them something for nothing, not only are you going to end up resenting them, but you're going to end up resenting the bigger organization that forced you to give them what they demanded. And that's not going to lead to anything good, let's just say. So yeah, this is a topic that really pisses me off. Even before I settled on bloat as being my pet peeve of the year, people who have nothing to offer making demands of other people, that was my OG peeve. It still is one of them. Now, bloat has superseded it in recent years, but this is still something that I got a spot in my cold dead heart for a topic like this. Anytime I come across an article that's basically some parasite whining that they're entitled to something that someone else has for nothing, ooh, that just pisses me off. Especially if then they try to play it like they're going to negotiate, right? So circling back to what the women do, like, let's say you got Trigglypuff, except even fatter, with an even worse personality. Like we're talking the type of personality that makes you want to end it all just when you're in their presence for like 5 minutes. Like you just can't stand them. And they demand you go out with them. And you're a perfect 10 on the scale for guys, right? And you ask me, why would I go out with you? What do you have to offer me? Well, I have my own house and a car and a job, and yeah, but I have that too. Why do I need that again? Now that I think about it, quite a bit of this problem comes from projection. What one side wants from the other side, they assume the other side also wants from them, and they're not even willing to take into consideration that, no, this is not the case. What the other side wants, you don't have. But you have to keep telling yourself this fucking lie just so you feel better about yourself, because otherwise you have to accept you have no bargaining power. You have literally nothing that the other side wants, and yet here you are demanding that they give you what you want. Doesn't work that way. Now, as I went over already, you can short-term you can get the government to force these people to give you what you want, but it's not going to last. You can't do it in relationships without severely violating someone's rights. So we're not there yet, but maybe we will be. But economically, like I mentioned earlier, if I was ever in the position where I was a business owner and suddenly it was no longer profitable for me to have that business because there's just way too many regulations that I had to deal with, and I'd just sell it and shut it down. I'm not just going to keep it running as a charity, especially if the profit from my business was my source of income. And now you take it away from me? Like, well, now I need to shut this business down because I don't have the time to basically do charity work. I need to get another job and worry about my own goddamn income. This is what happens when you try to interfere with a natural process. It never ends well. It might in the short term. Like, look at Venezuela. Look how great Venezuela was doing until they completely collapsed. That's what's going to happen. If you side with those who have nothing to offer and you force others to give them everything they ask for, eventually the people who you're forcing to redistribute their stuff are just going to stop producing it. And then what? Now you're all screwed, that's what. That's all I got to say about that.